St. John Philby, Gertrude Bell, T.E. Lawrence. There's a whole host of these, right? And it's not just the British, the French, Americans, and Russia. They were all sending spies into the Middle East because this is right when people were figuring out that there was oil. So a lot of it it's not just Gulf War. All of that region has to do with what they call black gold. And so there's a great book by a French intelligence historian, Gals Mounier. He wrote a book called Black Gold Spies, and we just reviewed that on my channel. That will tell you the history of the whole Middle East, including the nation state of Israel being set up, Balfour Declaration, etc. So it goes back to the British Empire. And then when America kind of inherited the old British imperial world control, the Pax Americana, America was in this position where they wanted to have an outpost in the Middle East that was on their side, that they could kind of have an alliance with there as a beachhead against other countries that in World War I, World War II, and then the Cold War. So there's a long history as to why the U.S. does that, but it goes even deeper as we get into the modern period when Israel has a lot of power and a lot of influence.
Right, we've got 10 minutes left, folks, with Jay. Please get your questions into the chat.
Could I recommend a movie on that too, by the way, which
Yes.
I just watched the movie. I could not believe how it was pretty plausible. There's a movie with John Hamm and Rosamund Pike called Beirut, and it's about CIA station in Lebanon. And the movie is actually a really fair portrayal of all sides of Middle Eastern conflicts, whether it's the CIA, whether it's Israel, whether it's Hezbollah, PLO. It shows the complexity of the region, the history, and it was actually pretty well done.
Erie wants to know the name of the book you were describing. He or she missed it.
Which book?
The previous book you were referencing.
There's a book that a French intelligence historian guy wrote called Black Gold Spies, and his name is Gals Mounier. Munier. So I assume he means that book.
What does Jay think about NDEX, a file generated by local PD that can be viewed by all law enforcement throughout the country? I've never heard of that.
A local police department? I don't know what it is either.
All right. Is Zelensky going to get overthrown in his country?
I don't know how that would play out. I don't know if there would be an overthrow. I think they would probably the West will probably the U.S. will just force him into some kind of deal, I would assume. I don't know about overthrown.
Will it lead to World War III or the end of civilization, i.e. nuclear escalation?
Well, I think that's one of the concerns, is that that's the card that the Western Atlantis' superstructure might play. Seems like, Zelensky immediately flew to London after the Trump meeting. And so the goblins have, sort of converged from Europe over there where you guys are to try to strategize what to do now if they lose the support of Trump and the State Department and the CIA and all that. So it could be a route they are forced to go. I hope not.
Sky Spirit wants to know if you think that one big player set the Ukraine war up, and if that player could be the CIA.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any question. Yeah.
Can you explain the Freemason symbols?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. So, if you get like Alfred McCoy has a dictionary of Freemasonry, and he'll go through hundreds of Freemasonic images and symbols, but everything from the bee and the beehive to kind of a top-down control to the square and the compass being sort of the generative principle. Sometimes they put the G in the center for that the masculine male phallus is what generates life, but also that the square and the compass signify the great architect of the universe working with eternal matter. This is an old Aristotelian position. I mean, there's a million Freemasonic symbols, so it just depends on which one.
Have you heard of the Seven Sisters Alliance in the oil industry?
Yeah, this was a big part of what happened in Iran. So the first successful CIA regime change coup operation was the toppling of Mossadegh to install the Shah. and that was run by Kermit Roosevelt. It was a really elaborate, initially unsuccessful CIA operation, but then Kermit Roosevelt chose to stay there, try it again, and through the original sort of regime, the soft power student revolution, pushing that kind of stuff consistently in the universities amongst the youth, it was successful. So it's kind of the first proto color revolution that actually turned into a real revolution. And that partly was because Britain and the West and America wanted oil. They did not want the oil in Iran nationalized. They wanted a deal where BP could have a certain cut, Iran could have a cut, and America could have a cut. And so this leads to this, what we know as Seven Sisters.
How is fiat money actually created?
It's kind of a complicated process, but the basics are just that they issue an amount of fiat currency that then they immediately allow the government to buy. The private banks are issuing it, and then the government buys it through bonds, or they basically just sell the debt to their cronies. The cronies can then use the debt and use the fiat money to buy up real world assets. So that's the basics of it.
Right. There was, have you watched The Agency on NF about wayward CIA agent and CIA London station Ron Burkle of Soho House fame, executive producers?
I haven't. I mean, there's a ton of Hollywood and British, spy shows. I haven't watched Spooks. I haven't watched MI5. I did interview many years ago. One of my first interviews was Annie Michonne, who was a former British intelligence, who was a consultant on either Spooks or MI5, I forget which show. But I haven't seen this one. So there's a million of these. I haven't seen them all.
Will Diddy be unalived?
I mean, if he's involved in a situation that's like a mini sort of Epstein thing, it's absolutely a real possibility.
Yeah, definitely. It depends how high it goes, doesn't it?
Right, exactly.
Right, let me see. We're into the last 5 minutes, folks. Last few minutes. Do you know anything about the Pope opening sacred portals?
I think these are just more symbolic doorways. If you go to the Vatican, if you do a tour or walk through, we did this last year. I'd never been there until last year. There's all kinds of sort of symbolic alcoves and side chapels, and there's all sorts of things the Pope does with sort of local Vatican adjacent traditions. So I don't see much. There wasn't much significance in my view of him opening these doors.
Do you believe Heather O'Rourke passed due to Crohn's or more nefarious causes?
So I actually had not looked into this until pretty recently, and it seems like the main questioning comes from the lack of concern about her medical issue, and then of all people, it's Harry Winkler. It's the Fonz, the Winkler, who was the main proponent of the idea that she had been abused. And if I recall, he said something like, "Oh, I worked with her on some show or film, and my suspicion was that she was abused." So the family still maintains, the sister and the parents, they still maintain that there was no abuse. But I don't know. I could see it being either way.
Can you break down how USAID promotes and liberalization of churches and why it's bad and why we should go? How do I pronounce that one?
Ecumenism.
Ecumenism
is the idea that we need to promote and push the sort of merging of all the religions. All the religions kind of believe and have the same ideas. So why don't we promote through CIA money, USAID money, entities and organizations that favor the blending together of all the religions, and especially within the various Christian sects and denominations. Yeah, so one of the things that came out was tens of millions of dollars given to the most liberal versions of Protestant churches. I'm sure USAID was involved in the Catholic open borders human trafficking stuff as well. And it's a way for the U.S. to push what it calls soft power or a culture war in religious circles as well. So if you're think about yourself as the state, as the government, you don't want to just push uh, military kinetic warfare power. You also want to project power through your culture, your economy, your education. All of those things become forms of soft power. And USAID was one of these key ways that they funneled money. I mean, it was money laundering too, but they also did put the money into projects that could promote Americanism. So it's just, if you understand soft power, read Joseph Nye's famous essay, Soft Power, and it will tell you why they do that and how they do it.
So now the funding has been cut off for USAID. Are you seeing any consequences of that in America?
I missed that first part. What'd you say?
Now that the funding has been cut off for USAID, are you seeing any results of that in America?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of that stuff is used for foreign operations, although some of it is domestic too. I think the effects will probably be seen down the road as some of the institutions that were funded kind of go away. So I don't think we've immediately seen all of those institutions fizzling out, but I definitely think we will.
Got a really highbrow question here, Jay. You're gonna have to draw on all your knowledge for this one. From Starduster. Can you do a freestyle rap about Sean?
I'll have to find a beat and I'll try to think up something. Yeah, that'd be pretty fun, actually.
Pull some lines from Sons of Ecstasy. Have you seen recent reporting that Donbass, Russia region has more minerals than the US needs?
I don't know about than the US needs, but I mean, I assumed kind of all along that there would be some attempt to, go after the resources. It's a mineral rich, resource rich region. And back in say 2000, I want to say 2012 or whenever Brzezinski's last book came out, called Strategic Vision. I read that when I was a research assistant. I was just sitting there at the college library desk and reading Brzezinski, and he had a whole section on Ukraine and what the West would plan to do with Ukraine, which kind of tells me that all this was planned because he talked about it before all this happened. It was before everything popped off in 2014. So, it was obviously well planned in advance, and it's all kinds of stuff. It's not just minerals, it's strategic location in terms of Russia, it's human trafficking. People overlook this kind of stuff going on there too.
Yeah, so put one in the chat, folks, if you think Keir Starmer's sending UK troops to die in the meat grinder because he cares about the people of Ukraine. Put a 2 in the chat if you think Keir Starmer's sending UK troops to die in the meat grinder because he's got a side deal with Zelensky and he's making a play on the minerals. All right, we are at time, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on. Absolutely brilliant as usual. We've got through nearly all of the questions. Is there anything you'd like to say to the viewers in conclusion? What can they look forward to on your platforms?
Yeah, thank you for having me again, Sean. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Really enjoyed the documentary with you and Sammy. I watched that with my wife the other night. We had a good time watching that. Yeah, I mean, what's coming up, I guess we're going to be doing more geopolitical lectures. I think we're going to do a book probably for members on the history of the Mossad. It's a famous book called By Way of Deception by Viktor Ostrovsky. So we'll probably be talking about that because a lot of people don't know that. It's a very well-known text. Thank you for your audience, for your questions today. Great stuff. But you can follow me over on Twitter. You can follow me on YouTube and all the outlets under my name.
Oh, thanks, man. I'll let you go. I'm going to close the show. So have a great rest of your day, my friend. Take care. Cheers. Bye. What a fantastic guest, as usual. So well researched. I could see how he was resonating with the audience. And we have got tomorrow. It's 8:30 p.m. now, UK tomorrow. Kate coming back on for Grooming Gang Story Part 2, the Birmingham GG. And I'll be doing a news broadcast at 8 before she comes on. Jay's books, Indeed, Joyce, are on Amazon. And thank you guys for all the questions as usual. If you do click on Jay's links, tell him that you've come from here. Show him some love, the cross-pollination, and we'll get him back all the sooner. It will incentivize him. All right. Much love wherever